A motorcycle is moving down an ordinary two-lane road. Nothing dramatic is happening. No race, no group ride, no cinematic sunset. Just one rider, the steady vibration of the engine, the pressure of the wind, and the constant scanning that happens almost automatically. The pavement ahead, the car waiting at the intersection, the pickup truck drifting slightly toward the center line. Then another motorcycle appears in the opposite lane. The two riders do not know each other. They do not know each other's names, where they're going, what they do for a living, or what kind of person is hidden behind the helmet. They will probably never meet again. And yet, as they pass, one rider lowers a hand from the handlebar and extends two fingers toward the pavement. The other rider returns the gesture. It lasts less than a second. Someone watching from inside a car might assume it is simply motorcycle etiquette. A tradition. A casual way of saying hello to someone who owns the same kind of vehicle. But people driving the same model of SUV rarely wave at each other. Two strangers wearing the same sneakers do not exchange secret signals on the sidewalk. Owning similar objects usually is not enough to create instant familiarity. So, why does a motorcycle seem to create a moment of connection between complete strangers? Maybe the gesture does not really mean, hello. Maybe it means, I know what it feels like to be where you are. And that raises a deeper question. What has to be shared for two people to recognize each other before they actually know each other? At first, the answer seems obvious. They are both riders. The brain is constantly sorting the world into categories. Familiar and unfamiliar. Safe and uncertain. Similar to me and different from me. Most of this happens quickly without a deliberate decision. You see the motorcycle, the helmet, the posture, and the gear. Before you know anything about the person, your mind has already identified a category. Someone like me. But visible similarity alone does not explain the gesture. A motorcycle is not just something a person owns. It creates a particular relationship with the environment. Inside a car, much of the world is filtered. There is glass between you and the wind, a roof above you, doors around you. Climate control softens the heat and cold. Music covers the noise of the road. On a motorcycle, the environment does not stay outside. You feel the temperature change as you move from sunlight into shade. You notice when the pavement shifts from smooth asphalt to loose gravel. You feel the air displaced by a passing truck. You smell rain before the first drops become heavy enough to see. The road is not simply beneath you, it is communicating with you. And you have to keep listening. A dark patch on the pavement might be water, oil, or nothing at all. A driver's head turning can matter more than a turn signal. A front wheel angled slightly toward your lane may reveal movement before the vehicle actually begins to move. This does not mean every rider is constantly afraid. It means riding requires a kind of attention that is difficult to explain to someone who has never experienced it. That is part of what the gesture recognizes. When one rider sees another, they are not only seeing a machine. They are seeing someone whose body is exposed to the same wind, whose balance depends on the same small corrections, and whose attention is being pulled toward the same invisible details. They may ride differently. They may have different levels of skill. One may be relaxed while the other is tense. But both understand something that cannot be fully communicated through a description. Imagine a sudden rainstorm. A driver rolls up the windows, turns on the wipers, and adjusts the temperature. The rider feels the rain strike the jacket, then the gloves, then the small spaces around the collar. The road becomes more reflective. Painted lines feel different. Braking distances change. Visibility drops. The rider does not simply observe the weather. The rider enters it. Later, when that person passes another motorcycle, the greeting may contain more than friendliness. It may silently say, "You know what this requires." That is why the connection often feels stronger than the shared object should logically justify. The object is only the visible evidence. The real connection is the experience attached to it. And that experience includes something else. Vulnerability. On a motorcycle, small mistakes can carry serious consequences. A driver checking a phone for 2 seconds may drift slightly within a lane and feel nothing more than a vibration from the lane warning system. For a rider nearby, those same 2 seconds can change everything. A pothole that is uncomfortable in a car can become a threat to balance. A sudden lane change can erase an escape route. A patch of loose debris can turn an ordinary curve into an immediate problem. Again, this does not mean riders spend every moment imagining disaster. Many ride because the experience feels alive, focused, and freeing. But freedom and vulnerability can exist at the same time. In fact, they often do. The rider has less physical protection, so attention becomes part of protection. You learn to read the road. You learn not to assume that another driver sees you. You leave extra space. You search for possible exits. You notice patterns that other people may ignore. Over time, the mind begins to recognize other riders as people operating under similar conditions. That recognition can create situational empathy. You do not need to know someone's personality to understand the position they are in. A rider may have just avoided a car that entered the lane without looking. The heart rate rises. The body tightens. For the next several seconds, every movement on the road feels sharper. Then another motorcycle approaches. 2 fingers drop toward the pavement. The gesture may be automatic, but the meaning can still be real. I see you. Stay safe. We are both navigating this. Sometimes people feel connected, not because their lives are similar, but because their risks are. This happens in many places. 2 workers exchange a knowing look during a chaotic shift. Travelers stranded by the same delay begin talking like temporary allies. People doing difficult jobs develop brief forms of communication that outsiders barely notice. Shared vulnerability can reduce social distance. It creates the feeling that the other person understands a reality that usually remains invisible. But when an experience demands attention, skill, and responsibility, it can become more than an activity. It can become part of identity. For many riders, a motorcycle is simply transportation. For others, riding represents something larger. Independence, competence, adventure, discipline, rebellion, peace, or control. The same machine can hold completely different meanings. One person rides because it makes the commute easier. Another rides because it is the only time the mind becomes quiet. Another may feel that the motorcycle expresses a version of themselves that daily life does not allow them to show. At work, they may feel replaceable. At home, they may feel surrounded by obligations. In social situations, they may feel unnoticed, but on the road, they are immediately recognizable. A stranger sees the motorcycle, gives the signal, and confirms something without asking for an explanation. You are one of us. This is where social identity begins to matter. Part of the way we understand ourselves comes from the groups we believe we belong to. You may think of yourself as a parent, a veteran, an artist, a runner, a nurse, a musician, a gamer, or a writer. These identities do more than describe activities. They organize meaning. They influence what you notice, what you value, how you interpret other people, and which parts of yourself feel most important. The wave between riders reinforces that identity in a tiny, almost invisible way. You are not only a person operating a motorcycle. For 1 second, you are a member of a recognizable community. That moment can be especially powerful for someone who does not feel recognized elsewhere. No conversation is required. No introduction is necessary. You do not have to prove your experience or explain why riding matters to you. The symbol is enough. This can be healthy. Human beings need belonging. We need places where parts of our experience make sense without constant translation. A small ritual can reduce the feeling of anonymity. It can turn a lonely road into a shared space. But belonging is rarely simple. The same gesture that creates connection can also reveal insecurity. For one rider, the wave is spontaneous. They make the signal and immediately forget about it. It is a brief expression of goodwill, nothing more. For another, the response matters. They lower 2 fingers, wait for the other rider to react, and feel irritated when nothing happens. Maybe the other rider did not see them. Maybe they were watching traffic. Maybe they needed both hands on the controls. Maybe they simply do not participate in the tradition. But the unanswered gesture can still feel personal. The rider may think, what is that person's problem? Or they think they are better than everyone. Or even, they are not a real rider. Why does a missing hand signal create such a strong reaction? Because when a ritual becomes connected to identity, ignoring the ritual can feel like rejecting the person. This is where social validation enters the picture. Validation is the experience of having some part of yourself recognized by someone else. Most people enjoy it. The difference is whether you appreciate recognition or depend on it. If your identity feels stable, the gesture is a pleasant confirmation. If your identity feels uncertain, the gesture may become a test. Did they acknowledge me? Do I belong? Am I being seen the way I want to be seen? The hand movement is the same, but the emotional weight behind it is completely different. One person is sharing connection. Another may be asking for proof. That does not make the second person weak or fake. It simply shows how external rituals can begin regulating internal tension. When you are unsure of your place, signs of acceptance feel unusually important. And when those signs do not appear, the absence can feel much larger than it really is. This is why communities often develop unwritten rules. A certain gesture, a certain style, a certain vocabulary, a way of dressing, speaking, or behaving that signals membership. These rituals help people recognize one another. They preserve continuity. They create a feeling that the group exists beyond any individual person. But every signal that defines us can also create a them. Some riders wave to anyone on two wheels. Others greet only certain types of motorcycles. A sport bike rider may ignore a cruiser. A cruiser rider may dismiss a scooter. Someone on an expensive touring motorcycle may be treated differently from someone on a small commuter bike. The community that looks unified from the outside may contain its own internal boundaries. Who counts? Who has earned recognition? Who is authentic? Who is only pretending? The greeting can become an invisible membership test, not because anyone officially designed it that way, but because human groups naturally create norms. When most people repeat a behavior, participation begins to carry meaning. Returning the wave means you understand the code. Ignoring it may be interpreted as breaking the code. And once people believe the ritual represents loyalty, they may begin judging others through it. This is the ambivalence hidden inside belonging. A group can make you feel less alone while also teaching you whom to exclude. It can offer identity while making you dependent on maintaining that identity. It can celebrate freedom while creating new rules about what a real member should look like. The motorcycle itself may symbolize independence, but the culture around it can still produce pressure to conform. Wear the right gear, ride the right machine, use the right signal, show the right attitude. This does not erase the genuine connection between riders. It makes the connection more human, because most forms of belonging contain both warmth and boundaries. They comfort us and they categorize us. They recognize us and sometimes they restrict us. The important question is not whether the motorcycle wave is good or bad. The more revealing question is what the gesture is doing emotionally for the person who makes it. Are you greeting another rider because you enjoy the sense of shared experience? Or because you need the response to confirm that you belong? Does the gesture come from confidence or from fear of being excluded? Are you recognizing someone else? Or are you asking them to recognize you? Sometimes it is both. Human motives rarely arrive one at a time. A rider can feel genuine solidarity and still enjoy the validation. They can value independence and still crave community. They can love the ride itself while also loving the identity that comes with it. None of these possibilities cancel the others. They exist together. And perhaps that is why the gesture survives. It is simple enough to carry many meanings. Hello. Stay safe. Nice bike. I see you. I understand. You are not the only one out here. The hand drops, the motorcycles pass, and each rider continues in the opposite direction. No friendship forms, no personal information is exchanged, but for one brief moment the road feels less anonymous. That may be what is truly being recognized. Not that the two riders are the same. They may disagree about almost everything. They may have different politics, different jobs, different values, different reasons for riding. One may be experienced, the other may have started last month. One may ride for freedom, the other may ride because a motorcycle is the only transportation they can afford. The gesture does not prove equality, friendship, or mutual understanding. It recognizes only a fragment. There is a part of your experience that I know because some version of it also exists in me. That is a more honest form of connection. We often imagine that being understood requires someone to know our entire story, but most moments of recognition are smaller than that. Someone notices the exhaustion behind a joke. A stranger sees the name of a city on your shirt and says they grew up there. Two people exchange a glance when everyone else in the room seems confused. For a second, an invisible part of life becomes visible. That is often enough to create relief. Not because the stranger fully knows you, but because you no longer feel completely alone inside that specific experience. The motorcycle wave is one version of this human need. We create small rituals to locate possible allies. We search for symbols that tell us someone else may understand what normally requires too many words. Uniforms, accents, gestures, stickers, clothing, music, slang, and habits can all perform this function. They help us answer an ancient social question. Is there anyone here who sees the world the way I do? The answer does not have to become a relationship. Sometimes we are not looking for a complete friendship. We are looking for a brief confirmation, a signal that our private reality is shared somewhere outside ourselves. The next time you see two riders pass and lower their hands, watch the moment carefully. It may look casual, it may even be done without conscious thought. But beneath that movement is a complex exchange between identity, risk, attention, vulnerability, and belonging. One rider recognizes the machine, then the position of the body, then the shared exposure, then perhaps a version of themselves. The gesture is small because it has to be. At highway speed, there is no time for explanation. There is only enough time to say, without words, I know something about the road you are on. And maybe that is why the signal matters. Not because strangers suddenly become close, but because closeness is not always what we need. Sometimes we only need evidence that another person understands one hidden part of being us. Then the motorcycles separate. The sound fades. The road opens again. Each rider continues alone, but not in exactly the same way as before. Because for less than a second, someone else confirmed that the experience was not entirely private. And sometimes belonging is nothing more than that, being recognized before you have to explain yourself. If you have ever given that signal, received it, or felt the silence when it was not returned, share what it means to you. And subscribe for more explorations of the psychology hidden inside ordinary behavior.